All right. And then I've been having people this part obviously won't go on the podcast, but I've had people just do like a verbal release, just saying your first name, last name, and then you agree to be on the podcast.
Oh,
And then
solid. I
yeah,
love it. I'm a legal guy myself, so that's awesome.
yeah.
So we're doing that now, or
Yeah, you just say it now, that's fine.
Eddie Laners the third, and I agreed to be on the Blake Music podcast.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, man. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and we'll do the intro and then we'll go ahead and get started. You ready?
Yep, yep.
All right, cool. All right. Gotta clear my throat, dude. It's like just woke up,
Me.
I know, right? All right, cool, man. All right. All right. Cool. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. I've got a very special guest today. I've got the artist Bugzee Lix. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the music that you make.
Hey, my name is Bugzee Lix. I've been making music for over 20 years. The type of music I make is more street hip hop, relating to the streets, whether it be gangster rap or whether it be kind of that New York drill rap. It's just coming from a street perspective. But I also have a different array of music to where I do electro music because I love the sound of it. So I experiment with that also. But the main thing that's got me to, be known around the world was through my street delivery of hip hop music.
Awesome, man. So tell us, like you said, you've been making music for quite a while. Tell us about like what inspired you to start making music. What was that first moment like?
I remember that I was like in middle school and I had a very talented friend, shout out to Yoruba Tape, who was, egging us all to start writing songs because there was a eighth grade like a social coming up, and so that was my first attempt at it. And then me and another guy froze on stage. So that was kind of like what would prompt years later me to really try to make up for lost time, I guess. And then that came with not having such good grades and kind of being sent to my room often and having my Nintendo at the time confiscated. I'm kind of showing my age here. So as I'm sitting in my room, my parents would allow me to still have my tape deck. And I remember I had gotten like a lynch mob tape. It was kind of like this real radical revolutionary tape. I was shocked my parents even let me listen to it, but it had like a little instrumental at the end of the tape. And so as I'm sitting there bored as I don't know what, I'm listening to the instrumental. It's the first time I've really heard an instrumental rap beat with no words to it. And so something just prompted me to relive that eighth grade moment and start writing to that. And as I would go through town rapping it, because people would say, "Hey, my friend here raps," and some of the older guys would say, "Well, rap, what you got?" Then when I got feedback, it let me know, okay, well, I'm not too bad at this. Let me keep it up.
Awesome, man. So would you say that was like your first influence? So like, as you started to kind of like get into the craft, did you like discover that you had more influences over time? And what were those influences like?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Ice Cube was a major first influence, but over time, I would gravitate to guys who live like me. So because I grew up in Seattle, Washington, we had a lot of influence from the LA area. Since I had a lot of guys older than me in Seattle, Washington, somehow, some way, they would get like all of the cassette tapes, all of the CDs at the time from what was called a swap meet, like outside of Seattle, Tacoma area, that was coming up from California. So we're talking guys like Brother Lynch Hung, X-Rated, Snoop Dogg's early stuff, the Dogg Pound, and of course Tupac would be some of my early influences from the West Coast.
Nice. And when you first started, were you making like mixtapes? Were you making like singles? What were you making?
Uh, I was making like cassette tapes. So, a friend of mine, this guy I talk about in my film, DJ Butt Naked, Ronell Ives, he was he was like a forward thinker. He was like a young Quincy Jones, if I could even say that. He would always like be telling us how to go to the studio, how to really craft songs. And so once I kind of got the blueprint of it and started doing it from a home perspective, then I would get these cassette tapes, and I had this thing called the Frog Pound. So I would paint them green just to have some kind of like little rememberable moment, and just be handing those out to friends, and sometimes even selling them to strangers. And I would call it like kind of a mixtape, but not being from New York. I don't know if that's what they considered a mixtape, but I was kind of mimicking what I thought a mixtape of different raps that I did was.
That's awesome. Man, I can kind of relate to that. I think some of my first stuff I recorded when I was a kid was on cassette tapes. You know, those
I
things are coming back, man. You can find them at like shops and stuff. It's kind of
really,
cool. Yeah, yeah,
I want to
yeah.
get into collecting them in albums because I think that everything needs to move, at least 50-50. Digital's cool, it's the next wave, but I want to see more tangibles where you can open it, see who all contributed to a work, and really embrace it. That's what music is about, embracing not only the artist who's at the forefront, but like how they came up with that creative process. And only cassettes and albums can bring that home for you.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like, you know, those are the kinds of things I would say like you make for your super fans. You know what I'm saying? Like if you go play a show and you've got some like cassettes or vinyl or even CDs now, like something out there that's got some sort of physical aspect to your music, like people eat that up, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I think I need to get back into more shows. Like I had a run of shows here in New York with a close friend who was a promoter. And then, when he stopped promoting so much and then, the C word happened, then I kind of lost my way in how to get in contact, face to face with my fans. So I'm going to work on that from about, late spring for the rest of the year this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like it's coming back, you know, which is good. And a lot of people, like I've got some listeners that live in that area. Most live, you know, it's all scattered, but how would you explain the music scene in like your part of town, like pre-pandemic?
Well, New York is, New York is the biggest city in the U.S. So pre-pandemic, New Yorkers were running wild, just every day a different experience in music, every day a different experience with live shows. Then when you get to spring and summertime, you'll have a lot of the concerts in the parks as you would like in a lot of southern areas or even California. So I was just at a point where I wasn't putting out the type of music that I wanted to display in competition with a lot of the major artists out here. So at this point, when the C word happened, it kind of gave me a chance to reflect back on how I remembered uh, the life of music right before the C word, appreciate it more, and say, coming out of the C word in the pandemic, I'm going to make sure that I dot all my I's, cross my T's, and really insert myself into the concert atmosphere of New York. New Jersey is like a lot of independent artists because we don't have a radio station here. So a lot of us gravitate to New York for that approval. And so Jersey's artists of past that became major, like the Fugees or Queen Latifah, or Bon Jovi, for God's sakes, Bruce Springsteen. Um, they've all had a presence where I don't understand because I wasn't living out here at the time. Obviously, they did a lot of live shows. Obviously, they sold a lot of albums. I'm just trying to kind of find my way into that zone and still consider myself an independent artist.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And every city or region even has their own like way of doing things, you know, like one of the things that I remember when I was living in Los Angeles was like, if you haven't been there and you haven't tried to play music there, you don't realize that it's actually like super structured and I would say almost too corporate, but there's so many because the venue owners know that like people will pay to play, so they do it, you know. But do you find like that area is like that too, or do you think like New Jersey has kind of a more of a like indie friendly vibe?
I'm glad you asked that question. That's a great question. So I'll tell you a story that just came to mind. There was a band that a friend of mine, I think it was a coworker, was a part of. I think he was I want to say a drummer in the band. He came to me one day at work as we're talking about music, and this is years ago. This is around 2007. And he said, "Hey, we're looking for a new lead singer." He had heard some of my music, and we're switching it up. We don't really, because they were a rock group. We don't, well, rock or alternative group. We don't really want to go with just the cliche alternative group. You rap, come out to a few of our what is it called, practices and sessions, and we'll see if we mesh together. So as we did these practices, and we found that we had some kind of synchronicity, immediately we're headed down to Red Bank, and we're working out of a studio that Bon Jovi had worked out of, who's from that area. And so even though that didn't work out because the group split up and then I was doing other things too, we never really we made one song, that was it. And going back to rap, I never had any more experience that was so streamlined to success than that experience. Because it's like right away I'm in the studio where people have worked with Bon Jovi, and you could see yourself within the first two performances becoming signed to a major label, to where in hip hop you can go circulate for years and still not find your way or still be in an independent cluster of artists. So I think that there's two lanes. I think that just direction wise, however you get there, it may be at the snap of a finger, or it may take a while because it's so congested, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. I feel like sometimes it's almost like it could be like sometimes based on your genre, because everybody, like all the listeners will react differently and the industry will be different depending on like what kind of music you make, you know?
Yeah, I see
Yeah.
that. I see that. And like these worlds are like they're so close to each other, but it seems that it's risky to do certain things in hip hop. They're all always risk in hip hop, to where other genres are more straightforward. This is what it is. This is the melody. This is, if you either you sound good on this melody or you don't. Hip hop is this thing now that's taken on all these metamorphoses, to where labels are so scared that they're going to get it wrong that it doesn't work a lot of times, and then you have so many people trying these new things that it becomes mundane to try to get to the top of the pile, I guess.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That makes sense. I guess it's kind of like one of the there's mostly positives that come along with having a genre that's kind of like at the top. I would definitely say hip hop is at the top right now.
Okay.
And that's kind of like you don't think about the back end side of that with the industry, like how they're trying to like make it work, because it's like they're trying to maintain like each artist like at that level,
Yeah.
or try to like match it with a new artist. That's actually pretty interesting take. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's really like, just looking over the last few years, I've heard like at least, if I had to count, 20 different styles that were attempted. And now it seems like everyone's coming back to that. You have to have lyrics, the beat has to be good, and there has to be some content outside of just flashiness. So it's done a 360, to where there are still artists that are like not having much content, but they'll have a much younger fan base. Those artists that are trying to have a longevity in the game they're now following the same blueprint as artists from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
yeah, that's interesting too. It's kind of like it's hard to tell, but sometimes it's kind of like, is music downstream from culture or is culture downstream from music? It's like
Ah,
this weird organic thing, man. It's like they kind of feed each other.
yeah,
Like even like with the social media platforms, I feel like music has changed based on what kind of mediums they have. Like for example, like TikTok, people will start making music like arranged for TikTok, where it's like you only
yes,
have X amount of seconds. So it's kind of like start right away, as opposed to like, let's say 5, 10 years ago, you had a little bit more breathing room for like an intro before you get to the hook, things like that.
yes. And I think that because I listened to a lot of Snoop Dogg interviews, and it seems that he's been frustrated lately with just how everything's geared towards an algorithm. And I kind of had that same sentiment. I just couldn't word it as good as he did. And so it's just one of these things to where if it works for the new generation and that's what they're doing and that's kind of what labels are clamoring to, something that's going to always go viral, I get that. It really doesn't have much time presence because people are fickle with gimmicky things, even whether they're a new generation person or not. And so whether I do something that's new generation ish, because I'm also part of the new generation as having kids or has listening to that type of music, I'm always going to want to stick to what I know also. And so my goal one day is for on TikTok, one of the like type of how do I say, one of the or original type of ways that hip hop is done goes viral. So you'll have like older artists like maybe a Will Smith with a song like Summertime that is gonna go viral probably all summer. But I mean like just any average song that some new artist does that's in that structure that can kind of still compete with a lot of these more gimmicky, catchy TikTok-ish design songs.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And at the very least, you can definitely hear like how the songwriting structure, just that alone. But yeah, I think what's interesting about your music career is is like most people listen to the show are like pretty new at making music. That's kind of why they're listening, or maybe they've been doing this for a few years and they've got like maybe a couple fans. I think that you're in a cool place where like you have a fan base. You've broken through that threshold where it's like when you first start, it's kind of hard. It's hard for people to kind of get that momentum. I think momentum is like really important. But what was it like for you when you realized, hey, I can actually make a community of fans? I can actually do this. And walk us through what that was like for you.
There's two things I'll say in that lane. So what I my goal was like to be heard locally and to be respected locally and to really like be the king of local music in a town right outside of Seattle. It's a Navy town, so you get a lot of people from different parts of the country, if not the world. But you also have your locals, and then you have, like I said, a lot of people that come up from California. So that was my goal when I discovered what type of music I was doing. It was kind of like it just related to what we were all experiencing at the time. And then I would do at that time large shows, so it wasn't hard to get people to gather around the music. It was just hard to place uh, whether I was accepted, like whether people were just coming to have a good time or whether they coming were coming to see me. And so I would back off it at that time because fame, when you first start getting a little bit popularity, you really don't know what to do with it. At the same time as I was making music for my hometown, there was a company called MP3.com back in the days that would allow people to order a CD where this company would ship them the CD. All you had to do was provide the music and the artwork. So I got a big fan base overseas, mainly like Manchester, UK, and a few other places in Europe that I didn't know anything about. And so that fan base, which lasts longer than my local fan base back home since I moved to Jersey, I'm pretty sure I still have some loyal fans, but I haven't done a show over there in about 12 years. That fan base in Manchester, UK is the fan base that's coming to look for me on social media, trying to find all my platforms, asking me about music and stuff. So it's a really humbling experience. It's just you definitely don't ever want to let your fans down. So that's where you start thinking like a company more to say, why did these people spend their time and energy and money embracing me? And how can I still put out the type of music that'll won't let them down or won't let them think that I'm going too commercial or too far outside of what they grew to love.
Yeah, that's a really good take. I think that's probably going to help out a lot of people who are starting out or like need some encouragement and something, which is great. I'd like to shift gears just a little bit because you got a lot of interesting things going on. So I'd like to ask you how you view the music industry today going into like crypto and NFTs, and like, what do you think that the music industry is going to be like in the next couple of years with these new forms of I guess media and art?
Okay, okay. I really love it. It's very empowering to any artist, whether an artist was on a major label, lost their deal, or somehow negotiated that they can put their music into NFTs to where they went out and the label wins out, or the publishing entity that they're with. I think it's a very cool lane, and I've seen some of my younger friends hit me up and say, "Hey, I just bought, you know, some streaming royalties to either Nas or some other new artist that I haven't heard of, but they know very well." And so it gives the fan an opportunity to participate in earning revenue from that artist. It gives the artist a new revenue stream. So to me, NFTs are the way to go. It's kind of like once it's fine tuned, I feel like you won't have as much complaint from artists being starving artists. I feel like an artist can create um, a lot more music because now they know that their music has a home. Like independent artists, I'm speaking of. Even a lot of times I'm speaking from an independent perspective, but even major label artists can. I just feel like NFTs are the way to go. It's like instantaneous, just as much as a TikTok or a Spotify, but the artist can kind of dictate if they want to give the art away or if they want to sell one song for like $1 million.
Yeah, I think and I think a lot of people are hesitant about NFTs and crypto and things like that because it's new. But I think a lot of people that have been through a few different medium changes, like you were talking about cassette tapes and vinyl and stuff. And I remember when MP3s were first a thing, and it was kind of set off by like the file sharing community, like basically like stealing music and being able to share it, getting it for free, and they had to compress it down to kind of share it, right, and get music quickly because the internet speeds were pretty slow. But
Yeah.
that was pre iTunes, that was pre iTunes. So like the technology will get there before the mechanism to house it,
Right.
so I think right now we're kind of like in the wild west of NFTs. Like it's really cool because you've got so many cool things going on, and I definitely want to talk about that too. But like um I think it's important for artists to think about how their music is going to be listened to, not today but also like 2 years from now, because you're building up equity into what would be the new version of the internet coming up in the next couple of years. And it's going to happen because you've got all these companies putting billions of dollars into it, so it's happening.
Right.
So could maybe talk a little bit about like how you're viewing your music as like equity into this new space?
Okay, good question. So I'll take it back for a second to go forward. About early 2000s, 2004, 5, 6, I was going to a lot of industry panels where they were trying to figure out how to go from, as we were talking about the torrent services, the Napsters, and what they were going to do to try to keep their music profits in house. And then that's when Spotify and a few other streaming services came out, maybe 2007-ish on forward. But as sitting at these panels with a lot of the A&Rs and execs and seeing how panicked they were at that time, it left this permanent impression on me to say, always think ahead, as you just mentioned, about where music is going. Now that we're at that point to where we can kind of see that music is going to be shared in a cryptographic, um, uh, non-fungible token type of way, I lose sleep at night because I'm saying I want to not only capitalize on that, but capitalize on it in a way to where I kind of beat the major labels to it. And so I think the only person I can really point to now, to my knowledge, that's done that is Kanye with his last, um, what is it called, Donda album. I think it was Donda
Mm.
maybe 2. I don't think the first one was like that, to where he came out with an apparatus. People had to buy that apparatus to enjoy the music. I think that's the only thing anyone can do is look outside of the scope of maybe just the US, products in the US, see if there's products that other countries are already enjoying music off, and say, whether it's in NFT form or whether it's just in an independent form to where your fans can buy an apparatus, listen to your music now, and then they can turn it into an NFT or something. I think it's a combination of hardware and software that would make any independent artist be able to kind of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Empower themselves and even employ themselves with this new technology that we
Yeah, the way man, we talked about Snoop Dogg earlier. That I think that guy knows what's going on.
have.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, what he likes to say is too. I just watched like a little clip of something he said yesterday. Was like his sons are like, you know, in their 20s now, and so he's like listening to them. You know, he's like, I'm learning from this new generation, and I can't knock that at all. Like if that's what it takes for a guy like him who's already sold millions of records to keep going in that trajectory, I'm gonna start taking notes from that generation as well.
Absolutely. I kind of see it like this is gonna sound super nerdy. I'm gonna have to lose some listeners here, but some people might catch on to it. Um, but the way I think about it is like dimensions, like spatial dimensions. You know what I'm saying? Like one, two, third dimension, or whatever. Like we operate in a third dimensional world, so we're used to that kind of stuff. It's hard for us to think about how like we can say fourth dimension, right? Like in space, or maybe the fourth dimension is time or whatever. The way I look at it is like back in like when the music industry was like the music industry, like, you know, proper, like back in the 40s, 50s, things like that. The music industry was very one dimensional. Like, you know, if there's a question and an answer, there's not much leeway there. Then it starts to open up. But like every time you open up a new like medium, it starts to kind of unfold. So now, like I interpret it right now, like we're playing like in a three-dimensional thing where you have to have, you know, you have to have content outside of your music, which I think you do really well, capturing people's attention. That's three dimensions. Now we're moving into what would probably be the fourth dimension, which is going to be like the Web3, NFTs, things like that. And we're not used to it yet. So
Yes.
everyone's kind of playing this. It's not like a guessing game, but it's almost kind of like they know it's there. They just, I don't think a lot of people have mastered how to use it yet, but it's definitely happening, you know?
Well,
So
yeah,
it's going to get
I,
more complicated.
I totally agree with you. I think the missing component to that is like licensing. And what I mean by that is like when you say, you know, there's billions of people right now that are playing Fortnite or some type of Fortnite game. You have like in China and Japan some other type of games that we don't even know exist unless you're a full-time gamer. And then their Fortnite itself has multi-millions, if not billions of users. So when I'm watching my son play Fortnite or whatever, he's about 11, um, I don't ever hear like music in the background. So that's where I'm saying the licensing aspect of it.
Mm.
Like whenever whether they've gotten it or not, whenever like a American company gets it, to where us independent artists have a stake in like, you know, if you go into this part of the world, you're going to hear major label music, but if you go over here, you're going to hear some SoundCloud type of artists. That's what I'm hearing from what you're saying. Like Web3 is here. There's a lot of people that a lot of the new generation are immersed in it, whether you're playing Call of Duty or GTA or any of these games.
Right.
But the major labels are the only ones that really have stake in EA Sports and stuff like that. When I could just plug in, or my son could say, "Hey, I want to listen to some of my dad's songs while I play today," and somehow he could just kind of immerse my collection from Spotify into that. I think that's when a lot of us will be like, I can kick my feet up and retire, you know. And that's what like one of my recent articles was about. It wasn't as articulate because I had to talk to a guy like you that was talking more multidimensional. But that's kind of what I was saying in the article. Like I want my music to come into the metaverse to where I get more in profit out of it, but it's not like the same Web2 streaming fraction of a cent type
Right.
of
but it's got so many different uses. Like I like that example with like Fortnite and games and stuff, because like that's what NFTs probably are gonna be, you know, like they're gonna be like take something with you from one game to another. But what's cool when you have this multiplayer experience, like it could be like the people in your squad here, you know, Bugzee Lix, you know, and they're like, yo, what is that? Cool. Like, oh, that's my one of my favorite artists. Like, you know, you could sell that NFT to that other person, and get some sort of like in-game crypto or maybe out of game crypto, which would be really dope. And then Bugzee Lix gets a cut, which is awesome, you know? So that's really cool.
That's the part that's like has me smiling ear to ear because that's infinite. Like I could see like the indie musicians who've been taken for granted so long now being like, hey, I made 2 million in Web3 last year. I made some real salary from just how many people are playing these games, and then all we're doing is marketing, promoting as usual. We're doing it in kind of more of a metaverse-ish way, but it's just the regular thing artists have to do for themselves anyway. Brand yourself, market yourself. Once you can connect that to people that say, hey, I like that song, regardless of if this guy is signed to this label or that label or sounds like these other people, I think the indie artists will benefit a lot more off of it being so accessible in Web3.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's a great way. You've got so many cool things out. You've got some NFTs. You've got like something on Amazon streaming, which is pretty
Oh,
cool. Amazon Prime. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
sure, sure. So I was one day. I'll kind of give you the long story, but I'll truncate it. One day I was. I'm a Nipsey Hussle fan. So one day after his passing, I was looking around for new content on Nipsey Hussle on YouTube. There was a movie, an animated film that they had done. You know, a post. What is? Well, I always forget the term. Post. You know, after his passing,
Yeah.
that had him riding through the streets of LA. And then you would have people in the background telling stories about different spots that this fancy vehicle, animated vehicle, was driving through. And I said, you know what? I don't like to really get out and do all these cliche music videos myself. I'm married now. I don't want a bunch of girls in the video butt shaking. How can I do something like that and tell my story? So I was able to get with some animating specialists. And I didn't really want to put out new music that way yet because all of my Manchester fans had been asking for older music. So I just looked in the archive of older music. We're talking 2001 through 2003 music, and mixed some songs in that I had done later, 2010-ish, 2014, and just kind of told my story in an animated way and kind of guided the animating team on, you know, I gave them that Nipsey Hussle video, which is up on YouTube, as a kind of a basis. But I didn't want to fully copy that. So I wanted mine to have like kind of a metaverse world that I'm driving through that you could kind of say looks like Seattle. You could kind of say it looks like any other big city, and just kind of tell a missing piece of my story for that fan base, and mostly in Manchester, UK, because they were the ones listening to that particular music growing up on it from 2001-ish to 2003. They just didn't know from my mouth all the parts that would glue in the music to what I was actually experiencing at that time. And I really wanted to give them that, being that a lot of them had rediscovered me on Instagram in 2020 during the pandemic.
That's awesome. And this is just for people listening. This is like a full on 1 hour like biopic, you know, which is pretty cool. So what I wanted to do, like I always ask this question, I think it's interesting. So if you had like a a person like woke up one day, they're like, you know what, I want to be an artist. What would be your one piece of advice you'd give them if they're just starting out day one?
So good question. Years ago, it would have been, you know, make the song the way your heart tells you and all this cliche stuff. But now I would say get a book like Donald Passman, Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. When my sister gave me that book as a gift years ago, I think I had read little inserts out of it prior to her getting me as a gift. But when she gave it to me years ago, And as I move forward, I'm just now, even after reading the book, let's say 7 years ago, I'm just now starting to do an enormous amount of the administrative work that it takes to get all of your royalties. So I would say that's my first thing. If we're talking about just creative wise, I would say embrace or embody the artist that's always made you feel good. You don't want to sound like them, but you just want to try to create music how something made you feel for the outside world.
Awesome, man. And so for people to find you, where can they find you online?
You mentioned the Prime Video, so I wanted to get the name of that. That's called Space Needle: The Animated Life of Bugzee Lix. It's on Prime Video. I'm on Instagram, but Instagram didn't let me change my name after a while. So you could find a Bugzee Lix Instagram. That is me too. But my main verified Instagram account is Lix the Six Toy. Twitter, it's Bugzee Lix. YouTube, it's Bugzee Lix. Facebook, it's Bugzee Lix.
Awesome. There you go. And we'll put all of that in the description. So if you're listening, it'll be in the podcast description. If you're watching on a platform like Spotify or YouTube, it'll be in the video description as well. Do you want to play a track for us? Do you want to introduce a track?
Yes, I was wondering how we would do that. Do I just play it through my Spotify here?
Oh no, I'll edit it in. Just like tell us what it's called, and you know, you can introduce it that way. I'll edit it in
Okay,
after. Yeah.
So this song is going to be called G5. It's a song I did kind of my take on 5G technology. And it's one of my bigger songs on Spotify. So tune in to G5 by Bugzee Lix.
There we go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Bugzee Lix. I appreciate it. Hang tight. We're gonna end the recording, but hang tight for a second. And thank you so much for joining. I think we've had a really awesome conversation.
You as well.
All right, man. Thank you so much.